What's up, friends? Kichi here from Trivium for another Fishman Presents. I'm incredibly excited to announce that today we're talking to one of my favorite musicians on the planet, an incredible songwriter, one that has really reinvented and reformed the way I hear guitar and the way it can be approached, which is always exciting, always unique, always incredible. Tim Henson from Polyphia. Let's get into it.
How you doing?
There you are. Great to see you. Great to finally chat to you. Like, it's not in person, but great
Yeah,
to see.
it's been a long time coming, I feel
Yes,
like.
yes, it has. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, man. Do, let me know which camera you prefer, this one or this one.
This one.
This one.
Yeah, this looks fantastic. And everyone says your levels are good, so we are good. That room looks awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I tweet?
Oh, please. Yeah, I'm gonna do the same thing.
What's your Twitch link?
It's twitch.tv/Matthew K. Heafy. Heafy.
Matthew, so that's Matt.
Yep, Matthewk, and then Heafy. Do the same thing.
All right. Just a Twitter. Gonna do Instagram.
Glad we're both doing this at the same time, though. So usually I'm doing it, and people are just kind of looking at me.
This is what I do at the beginning of all of my streams, where I just I'm like, you guys gotta give me like 10 minutes while I figure out how to work my phone.
I do the same. Chat level's good? Level's good. Cool.
I mean,
Let's see who wins the race. You or me?
I think you'll probably win it.
All right, that's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
All right. It's Instagram is the hard one for me because they're always changing shit all the time.
I always just, what I do is you probably do the same thing. I just copy the text and then paste that to each of the platforms.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm not even that good because I'll do the link and then have to like retype everything.
No, I always do the copy paste. That's the quickest.
With Matt Theo. Oh, and it's so hard to move the things. Like,
oh yeah, like the slashes.
Like once you have like text and fucking links and shit, it's just like I don't know how to click on anything.
Someday, maybe you and I need to invent the app that actually multi-posts correctly, because everything else, all the multi-post apps are terrible.
Yeah, I need us to be at the position in history where we can just think stuff and it happens.
Yeah. We're getting close, I think.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna put the link on my phone just so that I can view chat, I guess.
Yeah, that'll be, if you've got the Twitch app, it'll be right there on the channel.
Welcome to the chat room. Okay, are people saying that? Here we go.
Yeah. Cool. Everybody saying hi to Tim, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I can kind of read what's happening.
Awesome.
It's very small on my phone. All right, cool.
Very cool. All right. Well, dude, we've talked a little bit by DM on Instagram way back. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to see you in person, sort of, in our centuries in person. So thank you very much for taking the time. So where are you chatting us from right now? Is this your home studio?
Yes, this is the home studio, and this is the main room, and then that right there is the live room, and then there's Studio B in the other room.
Oh, that rules.
So yeah, it's a nice place to be and just get high in here and hang out and make music.
Yeah, it's a beautiful room. Damn, I really like that. I like the vibe. I just finally moved into this room. It's like a year late, but I'm finally in here. It's a mess. Yeah. As you can see, I started to collect like a bunch of Japanese instruments. Like I got a koto, biwa, shamisen, two shamisen. Then I got the shakuhachi, shinobue, and I got a whole taiko drum set in the other room, which is ridiculous. They all showed up. My wife and kids were like, what is this? So I've got like the three giant. I want to get the mega gigantic taiko. That's what I really want. But
Hell yeah.
I'm thinking about like starting to, because I don't know how to play any of the classical Japanese instruments, but I just want to learn it and maybe try to make some new music with those things because I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, that's very awesome. You're very like connected with your Japanese heritage, huh?
I try. Yeah, it was a little bit from like from my mom's influence because she was, when she moved over, my dad was still deployed in the Marines, so she just kind of raised me with the things that she thought I should be raised with: video games, anime, and that was kind of the right call.
Yeah, that's all the good shit.
Yeah, heck yeah, heck
So
yeah.
you're Hapa, right?
Yes,
Nice.
yeah.
Your dad is white?
Yep, he is Irish American Marine. I've always said I'm half Japanese, half Marine because he kind of raised me like a drill instructor, which paid off in the end. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
And how about you? Where's your family all from? Where did you?
Um, my dad is Texan, um, but I just recently took a DNA test and found out I'm British.
Ah,
Uh, and then the other half is Chinese.
awesome.
My mom is Chinese, but yeah, I don't really like know too much about like my heritage or anything, just because like she she like tried putting us in Chinese school when we were younger, and like being the only like me and my two siblings being the only like white kids in the Chinese school, um they didn't fuck with us.
Yeah.
And so like we came home crying because like we couldn't make any friends, and my dad was like, fuck that. And then just took us out of Chinese school. And then like ever since then, like we just never really did like Chinese stuff. So yeah, I envy your connection to all of your Japanese heritage and all the cool stuff that comes with that.
Man, well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, but this sounds insensitive, but it'll wrap around. I find comfort in hearing that from someone else because like when I grew up, I was always too white for the yellow kids, too yellow for the white kids. And then
Yeah, you're either one or the other.
yeah, always. I would try to hang out with all the Asian kids and be like, "Hey, man, you're not full Asian." And then the white kids would be like, "Oh, what are you?" And say that later on was like foreshadowing for the band. Like we were always too metal for the hardcore kids and too hardcore for the metal kids. So it's this
Yeah,
constantly not fitting in. And I think that's kind of what drove you and I to find these things that end up becoming so unique that I feel like when people hear you or when people hear me, they're like, "Oh, I know who that is," which is really cool. But it's great to meet like and chat to like a fellow Habsy because it's very rare. It is very rare to find other Asians in our profession, I
yeah,
feel.
and I feel like there's definitely even less Happas.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
there's, but also it's like it's such like a weird thing to to be like, oh, you're Happa too. Like I don't know.
No, I
It's just
agree. I
kind
agree. No, I would always do
of
that. And I would never know how to figure out, even like jujitsu in like my jujitsu school. I'll find the other Asian kids and I'll be like, hey man, I'm like, I've always wanted to like not just embrace and not just try to find like half Japanese kids or Japanese kids, but I've always looked at like all Asians, like, hey, let's all bond together. Like we all like food. We all like the kinds of similar
yeah.
things. Let's chat about what our stuff is and branch from there. I didn't always know about the Japanese side, and I would encourage you to absolutely look into your mom's side and see all the cool mythologies and the music. I think that the music will really excite you the most because what I do with every time we go somewhere new or every time I'm eating a specific food, I always try to pair it with that music. Like we don't have great Mexican food in Orlando. So I learned how to make like traditional Mexican food, but I would always listen to traditional Mexican music or modern Mexican music or listen like Rodrigo y Gabriela to pair it.
Yeah.
Um,
Hell yeah.
I've been finding so many amazing like classic Chinese instruments. And that's even where like Japan got it from. Japan got a lot of their early mythologies and instruments from the Chinese culture because it existed for so much longer before. I think that'd be a trip to hear your style or what you would do, how you would approach the ancient Chinese instruments with your playing style.
Dude, I saw one of our fans covered one of our songs on like an air who, or it's like
Yeah.
the
Yep.
thing like this, and it was just I was like, what in the fuck am I looking? It looks like a fucking soup ladle
Yep.
uh, with a string on it, and like you're playing our songs on this is crazy.
That's so cool. Oh man, I would love to just have you unleash on that kind of stuff. I found there's this really weird instrument called the sho in Japanese traditional instruments because I didn't know. I only knew about it was shamisen, and I befriended this guy that I bought my first shamisen from an ancient Japanese family. And the sho is this mouth organ. Now that sounds super lewd and offensive, but it's this. It looks like a church organ that you play with your mouth, like this, and it's the
Right.
most terrestrial sounding thing I've ever heard before. It sounds like an alien funeral. It's so trippy and it'll make chords off this thing as well. So I've got one of those coming soon. but I know that there's a Chinese version. There's a Chinese version of the koto as well that has, I think, more strings than the Japanese one. It's so cool, and it's so weird that there's what, 12 notes, and just playing on a different instrument or playing in a different way will make it sound like an entirely different world or planet or sound or style. And
Oh yeah.
that's what, that kind of circles back around, and that's what drew me to your playing. Like when I first started hearing how you'd approach guitar so differently than other people, it's what made it refreshing, because I'm sure you felt the same. Like we all have the same tools, and I feel like when people are doing the same thing as everyone else, it's not interesting. But when you kind of turn on its head and approach it differently, it becomes something unique. Why and when did you start? I'm probably going in reverse order, but for guitar, why and when did you start approaching it the way you approach it?
Um, well, first off, thank you for the kind words. Secondly, I think around the time in like 2017, we did an EP called The Most Hated, and this was probably like our biggest like jump shift from in sound. Where in the guitar side, what I wanted to achieve was being able to carry the song with one guitar. So essentially chord melody, right? And like just like a Polyphia take on what chord melody is, where you've got like your root notes and your top line playing at the same time, you know? Um, and so that was like the main thing that like, from then you can pretty much take like a single guitar part from one of our songs and just have it stand by itself and like it's still the song. And I just really loved the idea of that like simple like I remember like Justin Bieber's song, the one that's like My Mama Don't Like You and
Mm-hmm.
She Likes Everyone, that
Yeah.
one. It's so simple. It's just him and the guitar, right? And yet it's such a great song. Like, and it's just in its most simplistic form. And I was like, dude, we got all these like billions of layers and shit. And I was like, what if we like made it stand on its own, And so we did that and then added billions of layers after that. And the cool thing about that EP was like that was the first time that we started working with like producers outside of our genre. So like we teamed up with like Y2K and Judge and like they're like hip hop producers, And so like their way of doing things is so different than ours, and like they're so quick and just like wizards with like the MacBook keyboard. And it was such a drastic change of how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
that it kind of like forced a growth in the sound where like it was like, oh well, I didn't even know we could do that.
That's so
But
cool. That reminds me of like almost how like I've been learning a lot about Brazilian music lately. How Brazilian music will stand on its own on like chords and melodies, all with one guitar player, which is so
mhm.
trippy, and it's so interesting and unique to have like a symphony coming from one person versus the multiple. I definitely noticed the producer change. I think that's such a cool thing, and I think it's always great when people kind of break out from what's expected and what you're supposed to do. And I think that's what really creates something new and unique. Like there was this cool style. Like I remember when that material sort of first coming out, it had such a refreshing feel, and it felt cool and unique and interesting and familiar but different. So that's bravo. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's really cool. Okay, so now we should go chronologically. So that was the
Okay,
kind of
yeah,
that
yeah.
point. When did you first start falling in love with music? What was it? What age were you? Like, what started making you pull towards music? And what were those things?
Dude, I didn't start my musical journey with love. I actually started it with like disdain,
Hmm.
which is kind of fucked up to think about.
Yeah.
But because my mom's Chinese, she was like, let's have our kids start, classical instruments at the age of 3. And so when I was 3, like my mom put me on the violin and I hated it because, like what 3-year-old wants to do that? And they put me in lessons, and like I had like fairly abusive teachers where they would like, you would like fuck up and they'd get pissed and like smack your fucking hand with the bow. And they're Russian. So like that's I guess things that like Russian classical teachers do.
Yeah.
Um but so from there, I think maybe the first time that I enjoyed music was like probably from like the Disney movies, maybe like Hercules.
Hmm.
Um, I was like, wow, the music in this fucking goes. And then like in Mulan, like that shit, I was like, wow, these songs are great. And then the second time I enjoyed music, I think was in like second grade, and I got like a Happy Meal, and I think Lil Bow Wow was like big at the time in 2002. And he had like a CD that came with the Happy Meal, and I put it in, and it was a little DVD with just one song on it,
Wow.
like a promo for his song.
Yeah.
And it was like I think it was like maybe around the time of like Mike, the MJ movie with, was that Lil Bow Wow? I
Maybe.
don't know. But yeah, it was like about basketball. And I was so into it. But it like got me into like rap a little bit. And then in third grade, I discovered Eminem, and this is like OG Eminem, not what we have now with the whole like MGK thing and whatever else. Like this is like OG Eminem. And so like I just started like learning the lyrics and shit because I really liked, how, I guess, like how talented he was with like his lyrics and just his delivery. And then in fifth grade, my parents showed me the Beatles, and I kind of got like into Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And then in sixth grade was like the first time I discovered music for myself, like without like being put on by like somebody else, And that's kind of when I got into like rock and like, like metal and emo and all of that kind of shit. So from there, like fifth grade is when I picked up guitar because I saw my dad playing guitar for the first time in my life. I didn't even know he played guitar, but he played guitar his entire life except my life.
Wow.
Um, yeah. And so then like I saw him playing. I was 10 years old. So at this point, I had like 7 years of violin under my belt. And uh I was like, well, I could probably do that. And I like picked it up, and the strings are backwards and there's two more, and like I just couldn't fucking grasp it at all. And I was like, so like, what the fuck? Like I can play violin, like why can't I play this? So I was like determined to get good at it. And with 7 years of like violin at that age, like you already know like how to get good at something. So like I just started like grinding on it, and realized like I have a lot of fun with this, and this is like the first time where playing music is like enjoyable and like something that I want to do. And so I just, I had been around music my whole life, like in and out of like youth orchestras and fucking like traveling and like, playing like orchestral music and stuff. And it was just such a fucking chore. Like every Saturday morning was the rehearsal. So I never got to do sleepovers on Fridays, which pissed me the fuck off because everybody else got to do
Hmm.
sleepovers. Um, and then church was on Sunday. So like no sleepovers. Like my entire adolescence,
Yeah.
I had no sleepovers, which was like just not tight. But so I discovered guitar at that time, and really just fell in love with it, and like, discovered like the emo music and like how fun that was. Like, and then from there, kind of like got into like more heavy shit. I was like really into like Shop for a Cowboy and Whitechapel and fucking Despised Icon and like all these like really heavy bands. And then kind of like started getting into like virtuoso like guitar playing like Guthrie Govan. Um, and then from there, fucking like discovered like rediscovered like pop music and like
Hmm.
top 40 music and like rap music and shit. And this is like after high school, where because in high school, like it's very much the like, oh, my music taste is cooler than yours kind of shit.
Yeah.
Where you're like really into like the deep cuts and like shit that like nobody's heard of. And then after high school, you realize that fucking people don't want to go to shows like that. They want to go to fucking ACL and Coachella and fucking blah, your peers at that time. Like everybody's in college and wants to go do that shit. And you're like, oh, well, fuck. Like, I don't even like that stuff. Let me check it out. And then you're like, okay, I get why people like this. And then from there, it's just been trying to bridge the gap between like what that kind of shit is, and like where we come from in like the metal like rock world, you
Mhm.
know. So yeah, in a nutshell.
That's so cool. It's so interesting too hearing that story. The progression, my years would be different, but it reminded me of a lot of what I went through as well. And now that I have kids, you hear like hearing that you were told to start violin at 3. Like, man, my kids are 5, and I cannot imagine them picking up violin and like doing lessons on violin right now. Like, it'd be too much. They'd be like, no, I'm done with this, because we've really just stuck with like little things like singing. Like, and my dad kind of started doing how your mom pushed you into violin. Once he saw I had interest in the band, because I joined Trivium at 12 and a half, when
Mm.
at 13, he had me like start a production company. And then I was in this thing called OJT, on the job training, was one of the classes in high school where I could go to my work at the end of the day and like take a whole class period for that. But we would log hours. He'd sign off as my boss, but I'd have to log those hours on guitar. So I'd have to sit there and we'd timestamp basically. All right, you logged into work, practice guitar, seated, standing, practice your metal songs. Now I'll give you the grade marker and give it to your teachers. Um, and
And
like,
that's
yeah, it's nuts. So it sounds semi-similar because, also having like, discovering music at different points in your life for yourself, which was a really interesting thing that you mentioned. Because my dad always had like classic rock playing, and he played guitar a little bit. He loved like Led Zeppelin, Boston, Van Halen. Those would usually be playing. And once I took an interest in metal through Metallica, well, at first I tried out for a pop punk band with Damn It by Blink-182 when I was 11, because I was like, oh, guitar is the cool thing to do. Pop punk is basically what every kid listened to in Central Florida. So I tried out for this band, thought I made it. They never called me back. I'm like, screw guitar, I'm done with guitar. And then a kid lent me the Black Album. I was like, oh, I want to copy those sounds. I sat in woodshed until I could do that. And then got a Trivium from there, and like discovering different bands at different points, like discovering the Beatles in like 2008, and then Queen in like 2007, like really like backwards years. Yeah, it's nuts that I'm just imagining like you at 3, like getting hit with that bow. I'm like, man, that's so intense. But that's what kind of built us as well. Like, I feel like that's a part of the Asian cultures, even like always going the hardest route and sticking to that hardest route for so long until something works somewhere. Um,
yeah.
and
I see a lot of like Asian kids who like grew up that way, like make videos now about their experience about how like they, they're mentally broken.
yeah,
And
that's definitely
like
what drives people like you and I.
yeah, I mean, well, but like, there's some people that like were able to kind of take that and use it. You know what I mean? And then there's other people that like have seemingly crumbled under
Yeah,
it, which is a
absolutely.
sad thing to hear. And like, like these people are like reaching out for help and shit, which is, good, but also like a sad thing to hear. But yeah, I don't know. The Asian parenting style is wild, but I wanted to back up a little bit. You said you fucking started Trivium at 12, or you joined Trivium at 12, or
Joined
you
Trivium
started?
to join it till 12 and a half. So I played my 8th grade talent show. It was just me and a drummer. And I think our band name was Vertigo, or something silly like that. And we covered No Leaf Clover by Metallica. And afterwards, the younger sister who was in my grade of a high school kid, she's like, hey, my brother's band's guitar player just quit. Would you try out for them? And they were all like, I think maybe sophomores, and I was in 8th grade. And I said, all right, what's the tryout song? And it was For Whom the Bell Tolls. I remember walking in, I feel bad. You mentioned the sleepovers thing too, that like tugged at my heartstrings, but now you do sleepovers professionally
Oh yeah.
every day.
Every night is a
Yep,
sleepover.
exactly. So I showed up with my guitar and like this little purple dinosaur pillow that I had since I was a kid at 12 and a half, and walking into our drummer's house. And he was the first person, Travis, he's the first person I ever met who had like a tattoo on his wrist and like smoked cigarettes. I was like, whoa, who's this? Like, who's this dude? And I remember they're all looking at me like, what's this 12-and-a-half-year-old kid going to do? Because they're all 15, 16 years old. And I played For Whom the Bell Tolls perfectly. And the look changed. Then they had me in. So what happened with Trivium, they existed, a guy named Brad, Jared, Matt, and Travis. Matt quit before they ever had a practice. Then they had me try out. I made it in. And then our first show was the high school battle of the bands when I was an 8th grader. So yeah, since 12 and a half, 13, first band, first job is all I've ever done. That's why I'm not good at other things, because I like try other things. And I'm like, I'm not good at things, so I'm not going to do it. But the violin story also reminded me of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I started that 10 years ago. And I remember when I first started, I was like, I'm going to be awesome at this. Just because, like, I play guitar and I sang my whole life, and that worked out well. So I went in there, and the first time I ever grappled, I got choked out by a 16-year-old in 30 seconds. And he was like 80 pounds lighter than me. So I was like, okay, I have no idea what this is. And I stuck with this thing for 5 years of pain and punishment, feeling terrible, and then finally kicked in. So maybe there's something pre-programmed in our cultures of that, of like this perseverance of sticking with something that whether we're not sure if we like or that we do like it, or we just want to see and persevere and find it happen. But it's so nice to like looking at this generation, like with my kids, we just let them discover everything on their own. And you mentioned Disney music. We always have Disney music on because my daughter loves Frozen, loves all the princess stuff, loves all those things. My kids both love anime metal and anime music. Like I showed them Attack on Titan music, showed them Demon Slayer stuff. I won't let them watch the shows yet, but I'll let them watch the openings and stuff. And Akira's favorite bands, Powerwolf, Trivium, and Sim. Those are his favorite bands in the world. And he like screams and headbangs. And I think just think of it so differently because like our parents' generation would have been more like, here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to listen to. But ours is like, yeah, just go discover it. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, that's fine. Yeah, it's very, very just the cool parallels to talking to someone that's been through that halvesy world and having to be raised through these different kind of circumstances. I think it builds who we become. And I hope that people can hear these stories and go, I could do that too, and not crumble under that pressure that you mentioned.
Yeah, dude, it's an amazing thing. It's what's even more amazing to me is that your kid's favorite band is you.
It is
So
cool.
that's fucking wild.
It is cool.
Like,
They'd be like, Dad, can we do In Waves? Can we listen to Heart for Your Hate? It's
wow,
so cool.
dude, when I have kids one day, like that's gonna be my main goal is like impress my kids. Like, I just want them to think I'm cool.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that like really changed my life in a positive. Because 5 years ago, before having them, I would look at other bands that maybe start up after us and be like, oh man, why aren't we there? Or why aren't we this size yet? Or how come our band's gone up and down and up and down and up and down? And I just beat myself up over everything with comparisons. Why can't I play guitar like this? Why can't I sing like this? Why can't I do this? And finally, when I had kids, it shifted me and made me realize they don't care how big this band is. They don't care really what I do as long as I'm there. And then to find them as well, that they'd be into what I do has been really cool. So it made me shift from like comparing and contrasting and trying to be the best at all these things. I said, I need to just be the best Matt Heafy at all the Matt Heafy things. And I feel like everyone should take that quote for their own name. Be like, I need to be the best John Smith for all the John Smith things in the world, although that's a lot of people. And like, I feel like that became this refreshing thing that I discovered as soon as I had the kids. And yeah, it was bizarre. I don't know what drew them to the music because I was never like, hey, here's what Dada does or any things like that. But I think when I was on tour, my wife was scanning through music and she's like, oh, check this out. And ever since then, they'll sing it in the car. They sing We Drink Your Blood all the time, the Powerwolf song, while they're going to school. So people are probably like, who are these dark children just singing We Drink Your Blood by Powerwolf? It's really cool. It's really cool. I had them the other day because I've been getting into scoring a lot more lately. So I've got like the MIDI keyboard and all the samples, and I had them write their first song. I was like, all right, here's a bunch of patches. You just play. So I had them both play a bunch of different things. It's a mess, but then I quantized it all. So I really want to work on that and make that in their first song. They're also on my Ibaraki project. Ibaraki.
Yeah, you're starting them early, getting them credits.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. Well, what's cool is for all the viewers as well, and for when you do have kids, there's a thing called a custodial IRA. You can start a retirement account for your kid as soon as they're a baby, but they have to have credit for working. So luckily, like they sang on my Japanese black metal record that you can hear them like screaming, like playing in the background. So I'm like, oh, well, they worked for that. And I'm gonna have this song be like, oh, they worked for that. You can actually start their retirement account when they're like a month old, which is nuts.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, dad PSA.
Oh yeah, I'll give you a call to go over dad financials.
Oh,
and
heck
stuff.
yeah, you got it.
Whenever that comes.
Yeah, I insist. I'll do that.
I got a few questions for
Of course.
you. Going back to the, being 12 years old in the band. So, like obviously like Trivium is like a different generation than, where I come in, right? And so growing up, I always saw Trivium on like fucking magazine covers and like, MTV and fucking like all the like super cool things, like big, like famous type shit. And Trivium, the name it like Metallica, you know what I mean? Like it's like clearly this is the name, this is the brand, did it sound like that to you when you first joined at 12, or did it sound like, because when we first started like Polyphia, even now it's just one of the dumbest fucking names. People can't fucking say it, they don't know how to spell it, they don't know how to pronounce it, like and like I always thought, I was like, dude, this is gonna bite me in the ass, bro. And fucking 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 10 years later, Still the name.
Oh, I think your band name is fantastic. For us, I was actually the original singer that came up with the name. And when he wanted to lead the band, we kind of came to a breakup. It was Travis, myself, and Jared wanted to be a metal band. We wanted to be like Metallica, Pantera, and Slayer, Testament. And Brad wanted to be an industrial band. Like this band was originally intended to be like Skinny Puppy, early Manson, early Nine Inch Nails, that kind of thing, and Ministry. And we said, all right, let's split the originals in half. You guys keep the band name. Let's go our separate ways. But there were multiple times over the years. Like when I first, so my path went pop punk briefly, straight into metal, like mainstream metal. And then I started getting to extreme metal, like melodic death metal, got heavily into black metal. And then I got into metalcore and hardcore when I was about 16, 17. It was mainly through the German hardcore scene at first, like Heaven Shall Burn, Caliban. Then I got into the American bands like Unbroken Wings, Poison the Well, Converge. And I wanted to change our name so badly. And I remember there was a Converge song called When Forever Comes Crashing. I was like, that's what we should change our band name to. So I was about to change it to that. And Travis vetoed me. He's like, no, we're not doing that. So we kept it as Trivium. But still, yeah, at times I do feel like our band name, it's really hard to tell what kind of genre we are, what kind of band we are, how it fits. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing that both the names like Polyphia and Trivium are both like, well, what kind of band is this going to be? Look, you walk into look at Cattle Decapitation, Cannibal Corpse. There's no question. Like, this is going to be heavy. Whitechapel, there's murder. It's like, you just know what you're getting into. Behemoth, Emperor. But I think there's something cool when you're not quite sure. No, I think your band name's, you think you nailed it. Like that is the right band name.
Maybe it's being separated from it because like I did, maybe there are some people in the comments that were like, yeah, Polyphia sucks, but as a name, but I definitely saw at least one that was like, no, Polyphia is cool. And maybe it's the context of I'm too close to it to know, you know what I mean? Like, because like I said, when I think of Trivium, I think of the T and the B, and I see the logo, you know what I mean?
When I think Polyphia, I see the logo as well. So I think it is that removal thing. And it's that self-deprecating Asian drive thing that's in the back of our heads as well.
Yeah.
That's definitely what's there.
Cool.
That reminded me of, I know you got a couple more, but that made me think of another point. When I mentioned Ibaraki, and the first thing we talked about, how you said you liked that, you found it interesting that I delved into my Japanese culture, and then I pushed you like to look into yours. What the biggest driving force for me to learn about my culture more so, it was kind of semi-recent. So I've always loved black metal when I was a kid. And I loved it in my older years, and I had always talked about wanting to make a black metal project just out of love for the genre. But then I started looking into the bands. I was like, this guy did what? And this guy did this, and this person says this, and this guy believes this. So I started to like have all these problems with this genre that I grew up loving, but I realized I had the blinders on for so many things that I'm fundamentally like not into, like this hatred and this discrimination that is caked into some of these earlier bands. So I said, I need to do something different with this, but I don't know what it is. And this was right around the time of the pandemic that just before that, I'd become really great friends. I still am really great friends with Ishan from Emperor. And he sort of became a mentor for me of this genre, teach me all these different things about it. And one day, it was during the pandemic, it was about time for vocals and lyrics. And the project was still called Mrityu. And I got that title from Sanskrit because I've been doing Ashtanga yoga for 15 or so years. And I found that word,
which I gotta ask you about that. Keep going.
And then Mrityu means like life and death. It's sort of the concept, the Ouroboros. It's life in a good way, death in a good way, all these things. And I told Ishan, I was like, Ishan, I wish that I was Scandinavian so I can write about Ragnarok and Jormungandr and the end of the world and all this Viking stuff. And Ishan says to me, he's like, Matt, two things. That's been done. Second, write about your Japanese culture. I was like, and just in that moment, it like blew my mind. Because with Trivium, we've done a little bit. At the Shogun title, Becoming the Dragons, about the Japanese dragons transformation from the koi. But when he said that, this was also around the time where there was a lot of anti-Asian discrimination in America. People blaming us for everything about COVID and all these things like that. And it drove me insane because I was like, how can these logic points make sense to people? So I need to show of where I come from to people who maybe never hear these stories or read these stories, in the hopes that it would open their minds a little bit and want to look at the rest of the world and go, okay, I appreciate the Japanese stories of Matt. What are the stories of China? What are the stories of every other country in the world? And hopefully instill this open-mindedness, which is philosophically the exact opposite of what black metal is about. Black metal is about, this is our extreme world. No one else is allowed into it. So with my idea with it was, let's transform it. And I started learning about more of my culture. I talked to my mom a little bit. I was like, Mom, can you teach me about some of the stories? She's Shinto. So she's got the stories of like Raijin and Fujin and Susanoo and Yamato no Orochi, all these different dragons and beasts and monsters. And I started doing heavy research, changed the band name into Ibaraki, because that's the name of the dragon that also happens to be Trivium's mascot. But I was like, what if I go into this and figure this out? So every single song ended up becoming written about a different ancient Japanese, it's not even folklore, it's my mom's religion, from Shintoism. So it was through those little bits of driving points. And then I made a kid's book as well out of those black metal song stories to then hopefully help further open people's minds. So I'm thinking about someone just hanging out in the middle of the country that maybe has never met a Japanese person before that would get this book for their kids and read these stories and go, wow, I love these. I want to learn about the cultures and the countries and the stories from also South America and Africa and Asia and all these different places, and hope to open the breadth of the mind. So that was something I thought of. Sorry, I heavily digressed.
I feel like people these days would like see some shit like that and be like, don't appropriate my culture.
I agree.
So, but yeah, dude, tell me about yoga.
Yes.
I just got into yoga. I like on this past tour that we just did has been the best tour of my life for a couple of reasons. One of them being we got a personal assistant for the band, so like I don't have to do anything.
Those are amazing.
Really nice. But I started doing yoga the week before the tour, and we did it every day, along with like working out together every day, like as a band, which was fucking super cool and just like way like better than when we first started touring, where like all we want to do is get fucked up and
us too.
Now it's like, oh, we should take care of our bodies and like feel good and be happy. And another thing was like, have you ever heard of the burnt toast theory? It's I might butcher this and it might not even be called that, but it's essentially the idea that like anything bad that could ever happen to you is actually for your greater good. So like, knowing that, like, how like you go on tour and like sometimes fucked up shit happens, like the bus breaks down or like the AC gets fucked up and just like little annoyances,
Yep.
I used to let those just fucking ruin my
Me
day.
too. Me too.
And on this past tour, I learned that like, even when like little things like that happen, or even big things, like really bad things that happen, like I just know that like this is for my greater good, and it helps me like have a good attitude about it, and like being able to maintain a positive headspace consistently without like a bunch of ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and just like not letting like things get to me like that made this tour fucking awesome. But I really like want to attribute a lot of it to the yoga, because like I've been getting like super fucking high and focusing on my breathing, and like doing the poses and stuff and like focusing on my breathing there, and like I just feel so much better. So I'd love to hear about the yoga you do and like
Absolutely.
all of it.
Absolutely.
I'm like addicted to this shit now.
It's so great. It changed my life as well. I got into it right around the In Waves record, which would have been I think 2010 or 2011 is when the record came out, so it was like a year or so before that. I'm the same. I've always been, people ask me all the time like, Matt, how do you do all these things that you do, or like you ever feel like you're doing too much or you're nuts? And I feel like it's a mixture of ADD, ADHD, OCD, and incredibly high anxiety. Like if I look back at our lyrics from record 1 to record 10, there are songs about me having anxiety or self-deprecation or anger towards the world and all these frustrations. So I do a lot of things like we'll start now and then we'll go backwards. So nowadays, every single day on tour, I've got like a checklist of what I do. I might miss some of them. I pull up the list, but I don't want to interrupt our flow here. I make sure I get a little bit of sun time, but like careful sun time, because my dad just has had multiple bouts of skin cancer. My mom has had skin cancer, so I'm careful with it. Like I check the UV rating like a dad on my phone, and I go out and get as much sun time as I can. So this last European run, it was cold as hell. But I remember being in Dublin. I was like, there's like a strip of sunlight. So I got down to as little clothes as I can and just stood there in the sunlight, just like kind of absorbing that, breathing. I make sure I do that, meditation at some point of the day, foam rolling, some kind of exercise, super cold showers, super hot showers, lay down time. I got that from Alex, our drummer. He makes sure to be lazy at some point during the day, lays there for an hour, watches a movie, catches up on his phone, does nothing. All these things. And I made a YouTube video about it, like of all the day in the life. But yoga is one of the biggest ones. And yes, the breathing helps so much. Sorry, it's raining, so you might hear some of that right now. depending on what kind of styles of things you like to practice, I don't know if you like to do like me, I like to regimentally practice the same thing. I like to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, like getting better at the
Exactly,
skill.
at the same thing. So I highly recommend if you can find some classes in your area of Ashtanga yoga. What I love about Ashtanga
How
yoga,
do I spell that?
Ashtanga,
Ashtanga yoga.
Ashtanga, Ashtanga yoga. Now, what the
Okay.
beauty of that style, and I've got a book. I'll have to text it to you, or yeah, I'll text you or something. I don't have your number. I'll DM it to you. There's a
I'll
book
DM.
by David Swenson. Let me make sure I get the right thing. I'm going to send it to you right now as well. So this guy wrote like the hand manual on Ashtanga yoga. And he's the one that I believe brought Ashtanga yoga to America or outside of Mysore, India. I trained with a man that was taught by him, a guy named Steve Rubin in Orlando. And he's the one that taught my wife and I Ashtanga yoga. I actually got the link right here. So I got this book and I took classes with him for a couple of years. And I would bring this book with me and I would lay it out in front of me. Here's the link. The beauty of Ashtanga is the same moves every single time. It starts with the same 5 sun salutation A's, 5 sun salutation B's, the standing sequences, the seated sequences, and the closing. So it's always the exact same, which some people don't like. I've told some people about this. They're like, oh, I like to change it up every single time. But me, I like to do the same thing because I can see the progression best in that way.
Yeah.
Now with Ashtanga yoga,
Like, if you don't master the skill, like why would you want to move on to the other one?
exactly. So I would bring my yoga mat out. I'd have the book in front of me, like on the floor in front of me, and I would do this with it. What's really cool is the breathing. Have you trained with a yoga teacher yet?
No.
Okay,
I've
what's
done
cool?
no public yoga. I've only done, I guess the most public yoga I've done is like literally on the floor of the venue while everyone is around.
Yeah, I've done it like beer fridges, parks, by a toilet, like all these different things. I don't know if you can hear. Let me make sure my noise gate's off. It might be super weird, but shoot, the noise gate's cooked into that thing. So the breathing is almost like Darth Vader. Like you almost want to have your mouth. It's like this. I don't know if you can hear my. It's like.
Okay.
And every single breath goes with it. So it's like on the inhale of the sun, A beginning, it's like, and as you move the moves, it's an inhale that's specifically timed and exhale that's specifically timed with every single thing you do from the beginning of the practice to the end. So it's this consistent Darth Vader open mouthed breath that was meant to kind of like fill your sinuses and fill your body. Breathing, as you know, I was reading one of my daughter's favorite books right now is like Riley's Bad Day or something with this dinosaur that gets his tower knocked over by another dinosaur. And it all is about breathing exercises. And I'm sure that I haven't read the psychology on why breathing does so much. I mean, we would die without breath. And the beauty of when you have this connectivity of that breath going, I make sure even before shows now, I just stand there in kind of this yoga position.
I've been doing Wim Hof, like the fucking hyperventilating for like a whole minute and then holding your breath for a whole minute and then hyperventilating for 2 minutes and then holding your breath.
That's actually in the end of the Ashtanga series as well, where you do cross-legged and you prop yourself up, you're holding yourself, but it's like the super high pitched, like high, fast breathing. It helps
what's
so
really
much.
Cool about that is like, I saw this TikTok like recently about like how like it's in your best interest to be relaxed at all times, because whatever it is that you're good at doing, whatever it is that you do best, you're going to do that thing the best you could possibly do it when you are the most relaxed.
Yep.
Because you picture yourself being like tensed up and shit, like fucking, you're not going to be able to do anything good.
Yep. Absolutely.
And like when you, I guess the breathing, when you take in so much fucking oxygen and shit, like it really probably like something about cortisol, maybe.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But my wife read this book. I can't remember what the book was called. It was something about how one of the parts of your body you can train is your sinus cavity. And so I've been consciously making sure that anytime because I love steel mace, and steel mace is also from India. It's like a kettlebell that's stuck on a giant steel rod. And I prefer that to any kind of conventional weightlifting because it's also like Ashtanga yoga. It's the same series that you do every single time. And in that, I've been making sure I breathe specifically through my nose at all times, never through my mouth. And I feel like I've kind of trained my sinuses to be more open. Yeah, it all helps so much. I feel like Ashtanga has helped me with Trivium, the same thing you mentioned with being relaxed for things. I've had people go, before you get a show, do you get hyped up? Do you work out? I used to do a lot of jiu-jitsu on show days. And then my voice would be really croaky and dry and beat up. And what I realized, I have to be as relaxed as humanly possible and in the best mood possible to perform the most aggressively. Same thing with the record. We were doing the Sin of the Sentence, and there became in a day where I was all pissed off about something. The world was dark and angry, and I was doing screaming parts, so it should have been good, but it sounded bad. Next day came and we were all laughing, joking about something, not even thinking about it, hit record, screaming's 10 times more aggressive sounding. So yeah, I do attribute that to the yoga, and I think that that's something that helped so much. So I would highly recommend trying Ashtanga yoga. Check out that book. If you ever have any questions on it, I actually gave Head from Korn, I taught him how to do Ashtanga yoga on a mayhem we did together. So I was giving him yoga lessons. So maybe if you're ever in Orlando,
whenever we're at the same festival or some shit, let's link. I'm trying to do yoga.
Let's do it. And there's a great mat for touring. I think it's the Manduka Black Mat Pro. I'm not endorsed by them to be saying that, but I've been using the same mat for like 15 years. Manduka Black Mat Pro. It's thick. Let me make sure this is it. Let me make sure. It's Manduka Pro Yoga Mat. Is this it? It's not the travel one. I might have to check mine. Oh, this is it. No, that's the lightweight. You don't want the lightweight one.
The one that has like more padding.
Yeah, I think the thicker one's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say this one.
Dude, I've been learning pistol squat.
That's tough.
And
that is tough.
I've been doing it on the damn squishy yoga mat. And it's fucking hard. And then I realized, like, God damn it, let me just put my foot on this dirty ass venue floor and just balance properly. But
pistol squats are tough. I tried learning that stuff for a bit, but I've really gravitated towards steel mace. Maybe that's another thing I can turn you on to.
So what is steel mace?
It's this.
You just were telling me.
Yes, this giant steel rod with a ball at the top. But I guess it originated thousands of years ago in India. So it's supposed to be like more dynamic, like a kettlebell, but I feel like it's even more so. So it's like for hips, core, shoulders, but it does every single part of your body, and it helps with everything, whether shows or jiu-jitsu or yoga.
What I've noticed about yoga, and then like I've even started like a little bit of Pilates, like it like gets like smaller muscle fibers stronger. Like versus like when you weightlift, it's like, you know, bigger muscle groups are getting obviously like growing and getting stronger there. But I feel like that kind of the mace thing that you're talking about would like really like get like your rotator cuff and like all like the things that you don't really like think about training, you know?
Absolutely.
Probably get you bulletproof.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I meet a lot of guys in jiu-jitsu who be like jacked bodybuilder types, and it's more like visible muscle where people can see it, but it's not functional muscle. And I feel like kettlebell and steel mace and yoga are much better for that.
My older brother is a bodybuilder, and like we were like doing like I was like showing him like what I'm working on to like learn the pistol squat, and like he was struggling like crazy when that motherfucker can squat so much, but like, you know, as far as like bending over and touching his toe, it's like, you know, good luck.
Yeah, you'll see, like I'll see those videos on YouTube of like black belt fights a bodybuilder 3 times his size in grappling, and like the bodybuilder, they're much stronger, but they're not nimble, and you get around them. And also that much muscle requires so much more oxygen. So they usually gas out quicker. But I feel like you and I have that, like that quintessential Asian build. Like all these guys like, oh yeah, just eat 10,000 calories a day, lift heavy weights. I'm like, it doesn't work for me. Like I'm Japanese. I cannot put that size on without like steroids or something. But yes, I'm very excited you're into Ashtanga yoga. And there's so many cool things too. There's also a chant at the beginning of every single Ashtanga yoga class that I still have memorized just from doing it so much. And it feels good. And there's always like ohms at the end. And the meditation part's huge. Like I used to kind of not really believe in meditation, but then I'd see that it would work in the corpse pose. So corpse pose is called Shavasana. And it's a really interesting pose. That's when you're just laying flat with your eyes closed. And I remember when I first heard the definition of Shavasana and hearing its corpse pose, I'm like, wow, that's really metal. And I looked into that. That's where I found Ritsu, that concept of life and death. And so when I first made Ritsu, the black metal record or the black metal band, I wrote a song called Shava. And it just sounded like 90s black metal. I sent it to Ishan. I kind of like cold emailed him, got his email from someone from his label. And I sent it to him. I was like, hey, I've been a huge fan of everything you do. Like, what do you think of this song? He's like, oh, this sounds like true 90s black metal. And that's when I started going, oh, that's kind of it. Maybe I can find something else. And I started like injecting like Rodrigo y Gabriela and Beirut and like European gypsy music into black metal and seeing where else that can turn. But the moral of that story, yes, Ashtanga yoga, see if you can find like a legit studio by you and just take a couple classes. Because that breathing thing is so huge. And what I've always loved about yoga versus everything else, especially versus something like powerlifting or running or anything competitive based, because I don't really like competition based stuff for working out, one of my teachers told me a side effect of doing yoga well or doing yoga correctly is that you get better at it. And your expression of the pose is correct. If
Yeah.
you can only bend kind of forward, that's fine. It's as beautiful as someone that's down here. And the side effect of you doing it correctly will it be that you get better at it.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I don't know. It's a new thing for me, but I'm like I said, I'm just absolutely addicted to it. And even going to like the what you said about like not really believing in meditation and stuff like that. Like I used to be like pretty skeptical too. And like, what's going back to what I said earlier, like what's really been helping me is just getting fucking high, like before everything.
Yeah.
Because like do you smoke weed?
I eat gummies. Yes.
Okay. So imagine being high and then getting a tattoo, right?
Does it amplify or take away from the pain?
Oh, it all you can do is focus on it. It's just all you can do is think about that fucking needle just fucking, and it's like you can't think about anything else. Like,
Yeah.
that scene in Fight Club where like he's got the lie on his hand, gets smacked and shit. Like he's like trying to go somewhere else. Like you can't even do that. Like you're just right there with it the entire time. And that's the cool thing is like one of my friends who's like his whole life is fitness. Like he told me he smokes weed all the time. And I just couldn't believe it because I was like, dude, you're literally in the gym all the time. Like he's like, oh yeah, I'm high for it all. I'm like, what?
Damn. I feel like I'd drop a weight on my neck if I did that.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like I thought like that's so, what? And then I thought I came across this TikTok about like how when this lady when she's doing like her crunches or whatever, like what she does is she like visualizes already having the six pack, and each time she does the crunch she's making that six pack more and more visible, and so there's the visualization and the mind muscle connection of doing that, right? And so then I like applied getting high before I work out so that like every single rep that I do I'm with, and I'm not rushing through the workout. I'm just completely present with what it is that I'm doing. So then I started doing that with guitar, and I started getting really fucking high before I practice. And I'm able to reach flow states so much easier because what I do is I'll sit there and I'll sing every single note in my head as I'm playing it. Because you know how like sometimes you can practice and like you can be thinking about like, oh, I got to pick up the kids from school and like
I'll play shows like I'll be singing and playing and thinking
you'll be
about what am I
about
eating tomorrow? Yeah.
Not good, right? It's like the human experience is like about experiencing it. You know what I mean? And like when you're not there, when you're not present, like that's when I'll be fucking shit up. Like I'll just think about something else for a second. All of a sudden, just Guitar Hero when you fuck it up and it's got the shit sounds like that's what it sounds like. And it's because I'm literally not paying attention. And like the way that I found to like get out of that is like to sing every note as I'm playing it, as it's happening, so that I'm with every single note. And it's made me like so much more like I've been able to like let's say like I'm coming up on like a really difficult part and like I can feel the adrenaline like pumping, I'm like I can feel my heart rate rising because I know it's coming. What I've been able to do since like like doing yoga more and like doing the breathing part of it is literally slow my breath down, and it's like I'm here in this room, like with all like the hours of practice that I put in this room. It's like I'm there, except I'm on stage, obviously. And it just like it's almost like the opposite of being present because it takes me out of that situation, but at the same time it's so present that like I'm not, what I mean? Like I don't know if that makes it any
No, that's
sense.
amazing. And one of the things you mentioned too is flow state. I strive for that in everything I do. Like it's one of the hardest things to find, and I think that's why I love yoga, because I started noticing it there and I feel it there when I'm truly doing this practice for myself. And I found it in jiu-jitsu, and I found it only in jiu-jitsu when I'm actually rolling and practice, or fighting or competing against my friends. We've got a little like a group. Coincidentally, two of the guys of our 4 crew. One guy's also half Japanese. One guy's full Vietnamese. It's myself, half Japanese, and then we got like a bonus like white dude who's Irish American, who's in our group as well.
He's the token white.
Yes, he is. But when I grapple with them, like today in our training, time doesn't exist anymore. And one of the things you mentioned about like finding it when you're practicing and high. I love that you mentioned that you're singing the notes when you're playing. Cause like I was like, what does that do? And right away I realized that that's connecting the instrument to your body. Now the guitar is part of your body the same way. Like I can easier think of notes to sing than I can think of like to play on piano or something. Or I can write a solo in my head easier than I can sometimes playing guitar, but you've now connected yourself to those things. I think a lot of the philosophies of what you have of training and practice, I do as well. Like I try to make sure year round, I never stop. Like I always am practiced vocally, singing, screaming, guitar playing, rhythm, lead, 365. Because like a lot of other singers I'll meet, they're like, oh yeah, they got a tour coming up in 2 or 3 months. I got to start practicing again, get back in shape. I never want to do that. I always try to keep it year round. It's always in shape. And the breathing as well. Another thing I was thinking about the yoga breathing and what that does for helping for shows or for writing and for practice. It's helped, yoga's breathing has helped me so much for jujitsu, because jujitsu in terrible positions, like the objective of the aggressor, the person who's on top or winning, is to create pressure on vital soft organs or turning your head or your neck or crunching down your neck. So the person below makes a mistake out of freaking out for not having breath. But a big part of my game has become possum. So if someone passes and they're putting terrible pressure on, I'm just breathing. I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, I'm on the beach. Like that's one of the things I tell a lot of white belts. I'm like, just pretend you're on the beach. It's like, it's no problem that you're getting smashed. It breaks their confidence. And then you're able to find something better, find a different position. It's just a really cool chat. Cause like, I think even this chat has been like, holy shit, it's been an hour. Like that's also a flow state. Like, I think that's something that I love to find in everything. And when you find it in conversation, you find it through a meal, through a movie, through actually an activity, you know, you're onto something good. It's just been a really introspective chat. Like just, yeah, I've looked forward. I knew that the time that you and I could finally talk, it'd be very interesting. And I like seeing the parallels that we've had to experience in life. Like when you're talking about the early days of touring, what was interesting for like my generation of touring, it was like right out the end of the world where like we would support some of our favorite bands and get bullied. We get bullied by our favorite bands, bullied by their crews. Like their crowds would sometimes crowds be waiting for us by our van to fight us because they didn't like our music, like that world. And it was just like this different world. And it's the kind of thing too, when you mentioned earlier of the burnt toast theory. I've been asked in interviews, I'm sure they've asked you the same thing, or they will ask you like, hey, what's one thing you'd go back and tell your past self to change or to prep for or to do differently? And I would say nothing. Like I do. And I've always believed that every good and bad thing that happens to us leads us to the path we're at now. And all the missteps I've done, or all the bad things I've done, or things that I've done that weren't right, or things that I've lost at, needed to happen in order to teach me where I'm at now. And so that's what I was thinking about that theory.
Everything is a lesson.
Yep.
Yeah. Dude, I am glad though that like we linked now versus like any other time before, just because I don't know, like I'm turning 30 like on Sunday.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. I'm exiting my 20s and going into like a new decade, right? And like my 20s, I feel like fucking, just a goddamn degenerate. Like just I'd say anything, do anything, fucking like just not good. And now it's like I care, like, dude, I'm okay. So the mind, the power of the mind, I've learned, like, this is all like in the last 6 months that I've had like all of this like extreme growth in terms of like just attitude. But like I realized, we live in a simulation, and like I'm controlling a meat sack. And this is my meat sack. And it's like, dude, I get to do this one time.
Yep.
Like,
absolutely.
Why shouldn't I make my meat sack the coolest fucking meat sack?
Damn
like
right.
My experience in this meat sack should be fucking awesome, And so like
absolutely should.
I'm like taking care of like my diet, my sleep, my exercise. Like I want to be able to do like fucking gymnast shit, like, and that's like, I never thought that I would want to do that. And like, I never thought that I would ever be able to do that. And now it's like, I know I can do that shit, even though like I'm so far away from actually being able to do that shit. I know I can.
What you've already been able to apply to how you create music, you can apply that same amount of energy to any of these other things. And it is an amazing thing. And like you said too, maybe think of, it's cool that we both make each other think of these deep introspective things. I had to go to a service for one of my longtime elementary school, middle school, high school friends. He passed away unexpectedly. And like, that's proof that it is short. And we do need to make this the time on this world, like fun and interesting and unique and trying these different things. And I was talking about all the cocktail of things I have to do every day on tour, the sun time and all these things. I also make sure I regularly talk to a therapist as well. And like all these things, it's never a cure either. And it's not even a bandage. It's all the things that it takes, this cocktail of things that it takes for me to feel normal. Maybe not even normal. Feel adjusted. At the end of the day is usually when I pop I'm a lightweight, my 10 milligram THC gummy before going to bed. And that's the time, like I usually, if I made music all day, like that's the time of day, like I listen back to the things I made. I'm like, oh man, I forgot I did this. Yeah. And I like to close my eyes and kind of just like picture the world of that, or like making sure that everything I'm doing, if I'm listening to music, is it benefiting something? Or if I got a long car ride, it's like, I don't just want to listen to nonsense. I want to listen to something that's going to better me. Like listen to composers or classical music or something entirely different, or Brazilian bossa nova, whatever it may be. And just go into this and make sure that it's always benefiting something in the long run. And I don't, maybe that comes from our culture or something.
Yeah. But dude, I'm stoked that like, I feel like, all these things that I've been doing and then telling you about it and you affirming those things makes me feel like I've been doing the right things.
You are. It's freaking awesome. I'm so excited for you too. I'm so excited for you because like to watch what you've grown your band into as well. It's been amazing because I've been a fan of you for a long time, and then to see what you've grown into is so exciting. And I feel like if you inject these other things like into your life, whether music aside, like it's going to make your life so fun and fruitful and interesting. And that's what's always been fun for me. It's like, I love having Ashtanga yoga and steel mace and Brazilian jiu-jitsu and all these different music things I love, and food, and listening to all these different worldly cultures and meeting interesting folks that whether when we walk off this and this inspires each of us to do something different and unrelated or related, or allows us to keep in touch and have this new friendship or create something down the line together. Like it's very fun to see where life can go. And yeah, it's been a very, very fun conversation.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, dude, I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time today. Please stay in touch. Hit me up about any yoga stuff or the custodial IRAs.
I'm going to text you my phone number.
Yeah, please do.
I'm going to DM you my phone number so you can text me and we can just move it off of Twitter.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. It sounds good to me. And and if we could ever in the same town do some yoga together, eat together, jam together, whatever the heck.
I would be honored, man.
Fellow halvesies stick together.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, chat, for hanging around. I didn't really get to read anything.
Oh man, everyone's been stoked to sell. Yeah, like I kind of lost track that I was even streaming. Which is
I just felt like we were just doing a call.
yeah, hell yeah, absolutely, man, dude. Well, anytime you want to chat about anything, I'm always around, and I'll talk to you soon.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much, Tim. Later, dude.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye, friends. That was an incredible chat with Tim Henson of Polyphia. I'm Matt. I'll see y'all next time. Thank you.